On August 28, 2020, the internet didn't just react, it froze. Chadwick Boseman is gone. The headline looked unreal because the last image the world held of him wasn't a hospital bed or a farewell interview. It was a king, a symbol, a man who had stood on red carpets, spoken softly, and carried himself like nothing could touch him. Then, in a single announcement, Wakanda went silent. The shock wasn't only grief. It was disbelief. How could someone so present vanish without warning? The truth hit like a second wave. He had been fighting in secret for years. While audiences replayed scenes of strength, he was living a private battle the public never saw. Not one dramatic reveal. No press tour built around pain. No Hollywood final chapter. Just work. Film after film. Appearance after appearance, smiles that held steady even as his body changed. And when a few photos surfaced showing him thinner, the internet did what it often does. It guessed, it mocked, it assumed. Only after his death did those images become something else entirely, evidence of endurance. So here's the question that won't let go. How does a man become a global symbol of power while quietly losing power every day? How did Hollywood, the press, even fans miss the countdown happening in plain sight? Tonight we open the case file, not to sensationalize a death, but to understand a life lived with dignity, discipline, and silence. Because the story of Chadwick Boseman isn't only about how he died, it's about how he kept giving the world strength while he was running out of his own. Chadwick Boseman didn't come from the machinery of Hollywood. He came from South Carolina, from a world where dreams are usually practical and success is measured quietly. Born in 1976 in Anderson, he grew up in a close family with strong values and a sense of discipline that never left him. Friends and teachers described him as focused, respectful, and intensely thoughtful. Long before fame, he was already watching people, how they moved, how they spoke, what they hid. That observation would later become one of his greatest tools as an actor. But at the time, it was simply who he was, a quiet student with a sharp inner life. A turning point arrived early. As a teenager, a tragedy touched his community and left a mark on him that would quietly shape his direction. Instead of chasing attention, he leaned into purpose. He studied directing and writing, not just acting, because he wanted control over stories, especially stories about Black identity, struggle, and dignity. At Howard University, he trained seriously, surrounded by mentors who demanded excellence. He wasn't chasing celebrity, he was learning craft. After graduation, he moved through the grind that breaks most people: small roles, theater work, writing projects, constant auditions. Years passed without a big break, but he didn't detour. His path wasn't built on hype, it was built on patience, and that patience mattered. Because when his moment finally arrived, he would not be a blank slate shaped by fame, he would be an artist already formed. He knew what kind of work he wanted, he knew the weight a role could carry. The industry would later call him a star, but before the world knew his name, he was building something quieter, a mission. And once you have a mission, the rise isn't about luck anymore. It becomes inevitable. Chadwick Boseman didn't rise with one blockbuster. He rose by becoming history, one role at a time. His breakthrough arrived when he was cast as Jackie Robinson in 42, 2013. It wasn't just a sports film, it was a test of restraint, dignity, and quiet defiance. Chadwick played Robinson not as a superhero, but as a man forced to carry an entire movement on his back while remaining composed. The industry noticed. Audiences noticed. Suddenly, the actor who had spent years grinding in the margins was leading a major studio film with the weight of real legacy attached to his performance. Then he did something even riskier. He repeated the pattern. Instead of chasing random fame, he chose figures with cultural gravity. James Brown, in Get On Up 2014, demanded transformation, voice, movement, electricity. Thurgood Marshall in Marshall 2017 demanded intelligence and moral authority. Three icons, three different energies. One actor building a signature. He didn't just play famous people, he translated their impact into performance. Each role positioned him closer to a singular image, the man Hollywood called when it needed dignity on screen. And then came 2018. Black Panther wasn't just another Marvel film. It was a global cultural event. Wakanda wasn't just a fictional nation. It became a symbol of pride, possibility, and identity for millions. Chadwick's T'Challa carried a rare kind of weight, the responsibility of representation. The world watched children dress as Black Panther not because it was trendy, but because it felt like history finally arrived in superhero form. The premieres were electric. The box office was massive. The conversations went beyond cinema into politics, culture, and generational memory. In that moment, Chadwick Boseman became more than a star. He became a symbol of strength. But symbols are dangerous. The higher the pedestal, the heavier the expectation. Because when the world crowns you as a king, it forgets you are human underneath the suit. And that is where the pressure begins to change shape. After 2018, Chadwick Boseman wasn't treated like a normal actor anymore. He was treated like a symbol the world needed to keep standing. Every appearance carried expectation. Be inspiring, be strong, be the king. Interviews weren't just about films, they became about what he represented. Kids looked at him like a real-life hero. Adults projected hope onto him like a screen. Even Marvel's universe added weight, because when you play a character tied to identity and pride, the public doesn't separate the role from the person. Fame stopped being attention and started becoming responsibility. And responsibility is a quiet kind of prison. You can't show fatigue, because people came to you to escape their own. But behind the camera, the truth was unfolding in the opposite direction. In 2016, he was diagnosed with colon cancer, information he chose to keep private, not because he wanted mystery, but because he wanted dignity. He didn't want his work reduced to sympathy headlines. He didn't want the conversation to shift from craft to pity, so he kept working. He filmed through treatment. He showed up for demanding shoots. He carried physically intense roles and emotionally heavy performances while protecting the boundary between public image and private reality. The world saw premieres, red carpets, and polished suits. What it didn't see was how much effort it took to remain that composed. His silence wasn't emptiness, it was intention. It was control in a situation where so little can be controlled. And the cost of that choice was brutal in the most modern way possible. People filled the silence with their own assumptions. When photos surfaced showing him thinner, online commentary turned careless, some mocking, some speculating, most unaware. Meanwhile, he continued to do what symbols are expected to do: give. He visited children battling cancer. He spoke to students about purpose. He made time for others even as his own time narrowed. That contradiction, giving strength while losing strength, is the core tension of his final years. Because by the time the world noticed something was wrong, the countdown had already been running for a long time, and he had been carrying it alone. In the final stretch, the public saw momentum, projects announced, trailers released, interviews scheduled in the usual Hollywood rhythm. What they didn't see was that Chadwick Boseman was closing out his career like a man racing against an invisible clock. He filmed major roles while keeping his condition private, choosing to let the work speak instead of the illness. In 2019 and 2020, he appeared in films that demanded intensity and stamina, and he delivered performances that now feel almost unreal in hindsight. The most haunting part is not that he was working, it's that he was elevating. Each role looked like a new chapter. In reality, it was the final sequence of a career built on purpose, not publicity. In the months leading to August 2020, he largely disappeared from the spotlight. Fewer public appearances, fewer red carpets, fewer visible signs of the Hollywood machine. The absence wasn't a mystery he was selling, it was privacy he was protecting. On August 28, 2020, the world learned why. A statement posted to his official social media confirmed he had died at home, surrounded by his wife and family, after a private battle with colon cancer. The phrasing was calm, dignified, and controlled, exactly like him. No dramatic farewell, no media rollout, just a quiet announcement that detonated across the internet. The shock wasn't only that he was gone, it was that he had carried it alone for years, and most people never knew. Within hours, tributes flooded in from every corner of culture. Marvel Studios posted memorial visuals, co-stars shared personal stories, fans gathered outside murals and theaters, raising the Wakanda salute through tears. Clips resurfaced of Chadwick visiting children with cancer, moments that now carried unbearable weight. The phrase "Wakanda forever" shifted from hype to elegy, and the roles he left behind, especially his final performances, stopped being just entertainment. They became testimony. The countdown had been invisible, but the legacy was suddenly impossible to ignore. Chadwick Boseman's passing didn't close a chapter, it rewrote everything that came before it. Suddenly, his performances weren't just roles, they became proof of endurance. Black Panther stopped being a hit and became a cultural landmark frozen in time. Scenes people once watched for adrenaline now carried a different weight, a man embodying strength while living through pain in private. And when Ma Rainey's Black Bottom reached audiences, it felt less like a release and more like a final message, raw, controlled, unforgettable. The work outlived the body, and it did so loudly. But his deepest legacy isn't only cinematic, it's psychological. Chadwick changed what a hero could look like on screen and what dignity could look like off-screen. For Black audiences worldwide, T'Challa wasn't just a character, he was representation with power, intelligence, and pride, without apology. For Hollywood, he proved that leading man didn't have to fit old templates. For fans, he left a different lesson. Privacy is not secrecy, and silence is not weakness. In an era where celebrities are expected to share everything, he showed that you can protect your humanity and still give the world something enormous. And that's why he remains present today, not through gossip, but through impact. Murals still stand. Wakanda Forever still echoes at gatherings, premieres, and memorials, not as a slogan, but as a tribute. Chadwick Boseman didn't just play a king. He became a symbol of purpose, choosing meaning over noise, work over spectacle, dignity over attention. If you've ever felt stronger because of something he gave on screen, keep that promise alive. Like this video, comment the role you'll never forget, and subscribe, because legacy doesn't end when the credits roll.